people in danger. Who gave her that misinformation? We were still waiting on promised offers. She never replied to me. Maybe Mr. Dirksen might be able to get her to share her source of her misinformation. She owns Angel Law in Sacramento. We are only asking that you provide us with the ability to buy the same type of home in the same area we are currently living in. The loophole seems to be that there is no such thing. That it is not we, the homeowner's fault, but that is not our problem. And the relocation process is then allowed to use that loophole to show us homes in areas that are unsuitable as a replacement. The whole area was chosen, and we chose to stay in that area because the area is like it is. There has been one house for sale in Clarksburg probably about 4 years ago that not in the town, I would not live in the town, sorry about that, along the river that I would have bought 4 years ago. There was no way I could do anything about purchasing that home. There's currently 2 homes for sale along the river that I would consider buying. With the offer that I am getting, I can't even anticipate putting in an offer on those homes. The thing seems to be that you are forcing us, in order to get a fair value for our homes, to go to court. We just want this to be over with. We don't want to put in the expense, like Buck, of taking you to court to get a decent offer, because then it still isn't a decent offer because we have to pay the lawyers. Early on you said you were going to try to be fair by us. We don't want to go to court. We want it to be over. Mr. Finocchio has lost 2 of his brothers in this time. I've lost my mother. All sorts of things have been happening that this undue stress of this project has put on us. We just want a fair offer. At the time of my divorce, my house was estimated at $1.2 million. You guys aren't anywhere close to that. That is the value of my home. My home is probably worth more than that now, but I would want to settle just to get out of this. And now here comes the next problem. I've contacted Mr. Sierra with BRI about relocation. On my property, in case you didn't know, I have homing pigeons. The loft is 80 by 16 feet. They're going to put out a bid for the lowest offer to move the building. If I don't like that, how they plan to do it, then I have to come up with the extra money to hire a different company. That's one problem. The next problem is this building has to be put on a level cement pad. Nowhere in my appraisal am I given any value for a 100 by 25 cement pad that lays beneath this building. I will not be compensated for having to pour a new cement pad on my new property. That's my responsibility. So them saying they're going to do everything they can to relocate us as our property sits is not the truth. Every time you turn around, they have a loophole. They do not have to find us a comparable home in the area that we are in. If you go to Davis, you will find a house that sells for $400,000. There will be an identical house to it in another neighborhood that is selling for $800,000, and it will sell before the $400,000 one. Area has a lot to do with it, and this is just totally screwy. Thank you.
Approval of the January the 15th, 2014 minutes.
I would move for approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second. Been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Review of our monthly year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This cash flow report is for the month of December 2014. For the month of December, no revenue was received. However, Finance moved the accrued monies from the state funding agreement from Fund 257 into Fund 870, and they booked that for October, so accrued in October, which changed our cash position. Overall, not at all, but our Fund 870 position increased by $6.8 million. On the expenditure side, most of the expenditures were with the Southport project at $186,000, with work on the GRR at $46,000, the RFMP at $38,000, and some ongoing real estate expenses with the I Street and Rivers projects. The total expenditure for December was $347,000, and the fund balance at the end of the month was $8.3 million. In accordance with the auditing practices that keep changing or evolving, we're going to make some changes. One of them will be to add another fund number, 871, to account for the CIP projects in that fund. And the point and object of that is to separate cleanly and clearly the administrative expenses of the agency and its capital improvement efforts. We'll also be making some other changes in how we report the administrative expenses in the near future. Also, not on this report, but will be reflected in the January report, we received the first installment of the flood assessment of $2 million approximately, and that represents about a 5% increase over last year. And I think it calculates out that part of that increase is related to the adjustment we made to our assessment corrections that we did earlier in the year. So we collected a little bit more assessment there. And that ends the report for December.
Any questions?
Mark, where could you just explain real quickly that new category for the admin? Where does that show up on this?
Where you see the work orders listed on the page 2 of the cash flow report. Mm-hmm. Those will be, they'll basically just get a header that explains they're in a different fund so that you'll see them treated somewhat separately. So the reading of the report won't change that much, but we'll be categorizing them in a different fund so that the auditors can clearly see our capital efforts separately from our administrative cost.
Okay. So there'll be 2 categories for each project?
Yeah, it's basically just a reorganization of the report. Okay. It'll still read primarily the same way.
All right. Thank you.
No. I need a motion to accept the...
I'll move for acceptance of the report.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Consent agenda. Let's see what we got here. You want to approve these all at once?
I've got a question on 6.
Okay. Item number 5 is, no, there's no questions on it?
No, but Bill has something on 6, so.
Item number 6.
Yeah, local businesses, have they been put into the mix as far as being on the pre-qualified list?
Yeah, so the solicitation that was done by the city, Public Works, included reaching out to local businesses as well. So the list that we're asking the board to adopt today is the same list that was brought to the city council a short time ago. Same process, same everything.
Okay, because I know that I've seen a local business that was on that, and I was wondering if there are other in this engineering, inspection services, and all the other kinds of things that we do, if there were any other local businesses that were at least notified and had the opportunity to be part of that process.
Yeah, they all had the opportunity, that's for sure.
Is there a process in place for a local business like that to be able to add it to the list on an ongoing basis, or how is that list maintained, I guess?
So the list is established for a period of time and then can be renewed for additional, I think it's 2 to 3 years, and then maybe on a year-by-year basis can be extended. But once the useful life of the list is exceeded, then we would go out to advertisement again and start the process over again.
Okay, so
But there's no interim process to be added to the list once it's accepted.
You have a period of time where they can apply and get pre-qualified, and then the list is established.
That's correct.
Okay. I understand that this process is kind of in sync with how the city handles some of their contracts and whatnot. I would just hope as this authority, the general manager goes forward, that, two things. One, that we're kept informed of these contracts, and we do get to, at least through the staff report or whatnot, see what they are and whatnot, and that there's a amount here of $50,000. And, hopefully, we don't see a lot of contracts at $49,500 that are asked to be, added on to at some point. So if you use it, truly for the minor contracts and make sure that the board's involved in the larger decisions, I think that's what I would want.
Yeah, I think we envision as we move forward that we would report to the board our intention to go out to bid or enter into agreement for a certain purpose, and that if it was less than $50,000, we would intend for the general manager to execute the contract, and if it ended to be greater than $50,000, we would bring it obviously to the board, and we would report via the progress report monthly of our intention, receive any feedback from you, if you're in agreement or not, and then certainly we would report out if anything was transacted following that.
Okay.
Let's see. Item number 7. Which is
the property.
consideration of resolution 15-0204 regarding the acquisition of real property rights from private property owners affected by the Southport EIP project.
Pulling it off the consent agenda?
What'd you say?
You pulling it off the consent, or do you have a question on
Well, I have a question. Are we meeting our projection as far as time frame is concerned?
I think we're meeting our projection as far as the time frame is concerned for bringing these items and getting authorization from the board to then enter into negotiations with the property owners. I think it's a little early to tell whether or not we're going to be able to conclude all of these transactions in the time frame that we had established. But
I just want to be sure that we're getting the information out to the property owner in a timely fashion. That's really what I'm after.
once we receive authorization from the board, then we gear up with our consultant to inform the property owners as quickly as we can, following your direction.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments, I'd move for approval of the consent item.
Oh, I'd move approval of consent. Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the remainder of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Got it.
Those backward pages get you.
Item number 12, consideration of Resolution 15.02-05, authorizing the execution and delivery of a second supplemental fiscal agent agreement on the escrow agreement and a bond purchase contract.
Yeah, we came to you this past November, to talk about the refunding of a series of bonds that were issued in 2008. And so the refunding of those bonds would realize savings to the agency. And at the time of the writing of this report last week, the refunding component of the issue would achieve about a 13.6 net present value savings, or to put it in real terms, 1.7 million over the remaining life of the bonds. The market's been moving, up 25 basis points or a quarter of a percentage point since last week. So those savings are a little less this week. We don't know what the market's going to do next week, but we still are looking at substantial savings at this point on the refunding of the 08 bonds. Now, you have a table in front of you. If you had any questions about the refunding, I would just say that, again, our goal is to achieve at least 3% net present value savings. So at the time we go to market on the refunding component of the bonds, we need to achieve that, or we don't move forward. And then also, we're not extending the life of the debt. So of that outstanding principal debt, the extension wouldn't go beyond 2037. So we're not adding to the life of that debt. So that's the refunding component. There's also the new money component. So in December, we came to you and we talked about the opportunity to add a new money component to the bond issue. So this would be new debt. And what we're proposing, after talking to Greg Fabian and his staff, is that we issue net proceeds of $20 million. So this would be for projects. There's a list of the proposed uses and a table in the agenda report. But the new money would largely go to the Southport project. That's the largest component. But there's some other miscellaneous items there as well. On the new money component, again, we're looking at an extension of this debt out 30 years. So the new money debt will go out 30 years. Looking at the cash flow, we know that you're anticipating other sources of funding coming in as well. And so one reason we decided to go with 20 million is, for instance, the city's flood in lieu impact fees are one of the components you're looking at funding your projects. And we don't know what the schedule will be for those impact fees coming in from new development. So just to be safe, we thought that we'd increase the par amount of the bonds to get you a little extra project proceeds in case those in lieu fees are delayed. And then also, there's going to be added capacity that we're not accessing. So what that means is we anticipate coming back in another year or two with another bond. But again, if you look at the amount coming in from the flood in lieu and then the city's Measure V bond issue, which we're intending to move forward with this year, you're going to be cash flowing the current projects quite well. So in terms of other items to note, in your analysis section, we talk about the documents that you're approving. So these aren't unusual. They reflect the documents that you already approved on your past two bond issues. So we've got the supplemental fiscal agent agreement that will be with Union Bank. They act as our intermediary between us and the investors who buy the bonds. And so they actually make the payments to the bondholders. The escrow agreement basically deals with paying off the 2008 bonds. That's what that document is. Our official statement is for the investors. So it's everything from describing the bonds that we're issuing, their characteristics, as well as the underlying security for the debt service, and that is your flood assessments here in the city of West Sacramento. And another thing I'd point out is that for the investors, they're really looking at the mostly the private assessments as securing those bonds. And so even though there's the zero land value or the public assessments, they're mostly looking at those private assessments. And so the good news is that those assessments have been increasing. There's a 2% annual increase in the assessment each year, which the board has approved and will continue to approve to the extent needed to create capacity for the projects. With that said, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
No, I mean, this seems like a no-brainer, provided the market continues to stabilize, but, it's a good thing.
Sounds good to me. Let's,
And I think we appreciate the participation of the Measure V monies and the availability in lieu fee monies here in a timely manner that'll allow us to get the ducks in order.
So I need a motion to approve that.
So moved. The
Resolution.
consideration resolution 15-0205, authorizing the execution of the bond sale.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 13 is the project update.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll go through some highlights of this month's progress report for the Southport project. Since last we spoke, the final EIS was submitted to the Corps South Pacific Division. And that was submitted on January 28th. That was submitted a little ahead of schedule. We got permission from Division to receive the final EIS for review. That package is not complete until the NIMS BO is received. We're anticipating the final NIMS BO a little bit later this month. But this way we at least get Division to take an advanced look at it, so once the final NIMS BO does arrive and can be forwarded to Division, it hopefully will just be an administrative check and they can hopefully move to approve and release that for the final 30-day review period. I think as we reported last time, we currently have received, or the Corps has received, the final biological opinion from Fish and Wildlife Service, and NIMS, again, we're scheduled to receive that very quickly for Division, probably by the end of this week or early next, for a review and comment. And hopefully there'll be a quick turnaround to get that final BO down to Pacific Division. The SHPO, the Cultural and Historical Section Programmatic Agreement, was revised based on the Sacramento District's Office of Council comments. Those revisions were completed, sent back to the Office of Council. They completed their back check, and now that agreement has been sent off to SHPO for the review and hopefully their approval. On real estate services in support of Southport, we have 2 offers that have been accepted, and negotiations are ongoing with 6 other property owners. Associated Surveying Services. Mark Thomas Company met with DWR Cadastral Unit recently, and the cadastral unit from DWR only had some minor technical changes to how the descriptions are presented, and they're not requiring any revisions to those already received. But we will incorporate those revisions for future submittals. The meeting was very productive, and DWR was very appreciative of the upfront work that we're doing in support of the project. As a matter of fact, I think that's pretty unusual for them to see folks getting to them in advance of submittals like we are, and we're really hoping that this helps to keep that review and approval process going smoothly. Environmental services in support of real estate and right-of-way. We received and reviewed 9 new Phase 1 environmental site assessment reports and provided feedback, and then that should complete all of the Phase 1 ESAs needed for Village Parkway parcels, and they've all been forwarded to the design team. SCS Engineers has been directed to develop a cost estimate for a Phase 2 assessment for the Sarmiento Barrow site, so we can further develop that site for use of Barrow for the project. And then lastly, under environmental services, I think we had previously reported that the Time Oil folks, the TOC Holdings, had not provided any response to our reaching out to them with information. Since that time, they have responded and commented on the Phase 2 report that we had sent to them. And they've also indicated they are agreeing to a future meeting to discuss. Following today's meeting, we'll get our team and consultant together to review those comments, and then we'll be looking at scheduling a meeting with TOC Holdings in the near future. Moving on to design. So new for this report are a couple of tables. They are sort of milestone tables, one for the major levee work and one for the Village Parkway. Since those are separate packages that will move under separate construction schedules, we felt it might be valuable for you to see those two timelines listed separately. And at the conclusion of my report, if there's any feedback on how that information is displayed, we'd like to hear it. We can make some adjustments. If you'd like to see it displayed in a little different fashion, or if you'd like to add some additional information to it, we can do that as well. So current design activities include updating the overall terrain model, reevaluation of the design water service elevation, evaluation of the seepage analysis accordingly, updates to the geomorphic evaluation of the offset areas, and then utility impacts to levee construction at the southern city limits, right where it abuts with the South Cross levee. And then we're going to be updating our earthwork mass balance once the new terrain model is completed to provide a more accurate projection of the Barrow needs as we head into the final stages of design. So under utility relocation, staff met with PG&E and property owners in Segment B to evaluate and update service reconnect designs to minimize impacts to the property owners and cost to the project where feasible and appropriate. And then funding agreement. So we've received some word recently from the state that our decision memo is progressing up the chain. 2 signatures left. We hope to have those completed in the next 2 weeks, and then once that decision memo has been fully executed, then we move on to the actual amending of the design agreements. We hope to have those completed either by the end of this month or early next. So we'll be able to report out at next board's meeting how close we're getting. On the general evaluation report, the only thing I'd want to update or point out to the board is that the agency decision milestone was not able to be scheduled in January, so it is now looking at the end of February for that conference. We've received assurances from the Corps that they are proceeding towards the final report milestone in parallel, so there's no disruption in that scheduled milestone, and we're still on target for a Civil Works Review Board in June. On the setback levee project, the Corps project, portions of the roadway, well, the city, RD 900, the Corps, DWR, and contractor staff met to do a walkthrough of the project. And it was determined that portions of the roadway were identified as having deficient paving width, some non-conforming centerline sections, and some sections not meeting minimum design cross slope. The Corps issued a non-compliance letter to the contractor, identifying the deficiencies and directed them to provide a corrective action. The contractor submitted a corrective action plan. It's currently under review by the Corps. Once that corrective action plan is approved, then they'll need to complete the deficiency repairs before the roadway can be open to traffic. I think the Corps has since put the contractor on notice that they're going to be in damages here pretty quick, if not already. So there's hopefully sufficient pressure on them to get these repairs completed as quickly as possible so we can open the roadway. And then lastly, we'd like to bring to the board's attention, obviously, you, through the consent agenda, you took action on supporting a flood emergency response preparation grant in support of the potential of emergency operations at the ship channel for protection of the port and the city. But I just wanted to also point out that also under the round 2 grant applications, the city also applied for some additional funding to expand upon its efforts that are currently underway under the round 1 grant application for flood emergency response planning and operations. This round 2, the city is focusing on internal drainage and localized flooding, as well as recovery operations, how we get the water out of the city should we have a catastrophic flooding event. Those applications were submitted separately. They'll be managed separately, separate sources of funding should they both be awarded. And we'll continue to report to the board on how the review process goes and whether we look like we're going to get funded or not. And that completes my updates. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Tom?
Not this time. Good.
Thank you very much. Back to the start of this damn thing. Informational items. None?
None.
Meeting's adjourned.